Welcome to the Ash of Grim, where the shadows speak and the truth is buried beneath the quiet. What you are about to hear is far from ordinary camping stories. You will witness the real terrors experienced by hikers who vanished deep within the Appalachian mountains. These tales will creep in slowly, like those unsettling whispers that rush into your mind at night and refuse to let go. Turn off the lights and put on your headphones, because after what you are about to hear, I doubt you will ever want to walk alone in the forest again. Let's begin. I think it was about 3 years ago. It was one of my long solo hikes toward the northern stretches of the Appalachian Mountains. I knew the region well, but the trail I chose that day was so old it barely appeared on maps. I had heard that it once led to a fire lookout tower, but the tower was said to be long gone or swallowed by the forest. Still, an odd curiosity tugged at me. Something was pulling me toward it. Early in the morning, I took my backpack and stepped onto the trail. The leaves shimmered in the morning light. Birds were singing. But the deeper I walked into the woods, the quieter it became. It was as if the forest was drawing me in and cutting off my connection to the outside world. The trail grew stranger as I went. Small stones rolled under my boots. Freshly snapped branches lay scattered across the ground, and there were long drag marks carved through the soil. Even so, I wasn't afraid. I was used to things like that. But after about 2 hours, I realized something. The silence was too complete. Not a single bird call, not even wind. Around noon, I reached an old campsite, a rusted can, a warped tent pole, and the cold stones of an extinguished fire pit. It had been abandoned for years, but one detail unsettled me. Inside the fire pit, there was a footprint, fresh. Maybe it belonged to another hiker, but it was only one person's print, and the steps circled the pit, over and over, as if someone had been pacing around the fire. I set my bag down, drank some water, and leaned against a tree. That was when I heard a faint crack behind me. It made me jump. I turned around. No one. The forest was silent. A moment later, the crack came again, this time closer, slow, rhythmic, like footsteps. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer. Only a soft rustle, a leaf shifting, a sound like breathing, but I couldn't be sure. I grabbed my pack and started walking back up the trail. With every step, I felt something following me. It pressed against me like a weight on my shoulders. Sometimes I stopped to listen. Silence. Then again, a footstep. This time, I heard it clearly. I walked faster. Between the trees, a shadow slipped past, something black, but it wasn't shaped like a person. It was taller, thinner. Every movement sounded like bones grinding. My heart pounded. I picked up the pace. After a while, I found a ring of old stones, what looked like the foundation of the collapsed lookout tower. It must have fallen decades ago. But there was another sign. On the stones, a dark brown smear, like mud, but it didn't smell like mud. It smelled metallic. The moment I lifted my head, every hair on my body stood on end. Between the trees, a pair of eyes stared at me, high off the ground, too high for any human. The eyes were pale yellow, not glowing, just dull and flat, unmoving. I yelled, but my voice shook. My shout echoed across the forest. The thing began to move. It slipped from tree to tree without a sound, like an animal, but its body was almost human. A cold dread flooded me. I couldn't think or speak. There was only one thing to do: run. I bolted down the trail. My boots caught on roots as I stumbled forward. I didn't dare look back. I knew if I did, it would catch me. My breathing was breaking when a scream tore through the forest. It wasn't human. It was the choking cry of something dying. It echoed endlessly between the trees. I left the trail, but I didn't care. I just ran. Eventually, I heard the distant sound of water, a stream. It felt like salvation. I headed toward it and fell to my knees at the bank, gasping for air. I was trying to calm myself when a figure stepped into view on the opposite side of the stream. Tall, thin, motionless. Its head was tilted slightly to the side, watching me. Even across the water, I couldn't make out facial features because there were none. Just a black, empty space where a face should be. The eyes, though, were the same dull yellow ones I had seen before. It stepped into the water. Then another step. I yanked my flashlight from my pack and shined it directly at its face. The moment the light hit, it recoiled, just a bit, but it didn't vanish. It simply moved back slowly, fading into the trees. Its eyes dimmed like dying embers and dissolved into the shadows. I took the chance and ran. I searched desperately for the trail. Just when I thought I was lost, I saw the old sign at the entrance of the campsite far ahead. When I reached it, I finally felt safe. I turned back once more to look at the forest. Nothing, only a deep, heavy silence. But that night, as I tried to sleep in my motel room, a faint tapping sound pulled me back to those moments. I walked to the window. On the outside of the glass, there was a wet mark. A long, thin handprint. My story doesn't end there, because sometimes when I watch videos about the Appalachian wilderness, I still feel those pale yellow eyes watching me again, as if that thing is still trying to find me. I've seen many strange things during my hikes along the Appalachian Mountains. But what happened to me last year still sends a cold shiver through me every time I think about it. This is the story of a night so dark it could make even an ordinary hiker question their sanity. It was late June. The weather was warm and the sky was clear. I had planned a 2-day hiking route, and I decided to spend the night in a small cabin that barely showed up on the map, said to have been used long ago by a group of foresters. It wasn't tall like a tower, just an old hunting cabin buried in the woods with a single door. I liked staying in places like that because they protected me from the wind and saved me the trouble of building a fire. I reached the cabin in the afternoon. The door was half open. At first glance, it looked abandoned. Inside, there was a rusted stove, a broken chair, and a dusty bed frame in the corner. Old scratches covered the walls, and dried cobwebs hung from the ceiling beams. Everything felt eaten away by time. I checked the cabin and found no issues. I set my gear down in the corner, ate a bit, and went out for a short walk before sunset. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no wind. It was like nature had stopped breathing. The silence made me uneasy, but going home never crossed my mind. I'd been hiking this region for years. I knew fear. When the sun set, I returned to the cabin. I shut the door behind me. I sat on the bed and pointed my flashlight at the ceiling. After reading for a few hours, fatigue settled in. I lay down and listened to my own breathing in the silence. My eyelids were getting heavy when I heard a faint tapping outside. At first, I ignored it. Forest sounds at night, I thought. But the tapping continued. It wasn't rhythmic. Something was snapping branches, far away, then close, almost like an animal sniffing around the cabin. I turned on my side and listened more carefully. Then I heard it. The door handle moved. I sat up. My heart was pounding. I stared at the cabin door. In the dim light, a shadow appeared under the gap at the bottom, like someone's feet. It was possible another hiker had wandered this far into the woods, but that thought didn't feel right. A deep suspicion clenched inside me. "Who's out there?" I shouted. Silence. Then the door handle turned again, slow, patient, not like someone trying to break in, more like someone simply trying to enter. I stood up and grabbed my trekking pole. I stepped lightly toward the door. Behind it, I could hear breathing, but it wasn't human. It was deeper, like a low, humming exhale. I didn't know what would happen if I opened that door, but I was determined not to. The handle turned once more, harder this time. Then everything stopped. The breathing, the tapping, the squeak of the handle, all of it. The silence that remained inside the cabin felt almost deafening. I shined my flashlight under the door. Nothing, no shadow. I held my breath and stepped back. Just as I sat down beside the bed, a sound came from outside, a scratching noise, long nails dragging across the wooden door, slowly climbing upward, then sliding down, then up again. It could have been an animal, but something inside me insisted it wasn't. It was too deliberate, too conscious. The scratching stopped suddenly. Then came a knock. One time, then again, then 3 times in a row. My whole body went cold. My mouth was dry. I didn't know what to do, so I just waited. Then something fell behind the cabin, the sound of metal toppling over. An old gasoline can beside the stove had rolled across the floor. I hadn't touched it. I couldn't see what moved it, but I felt something inside the cabin. The cabin had only one room, and whatever got in had nowhere else to hide. I slowly turned my head and scanned the dark corners of the room. Nothing. I turned off my flashlight. Maybe the darkness would hide me, but something else was in that darkness. Another breath. This time from inside the room. My own breath stopped. I flicked my flashlight back on. At that instant, I heard something being dragged quickly from under the bed. The wooden frame rattled slightly. I pointed the light down. The space was empty, but I heard something crawling, a deep scraping movement slipping out from beneath the boards. Suddenly, the door burst open with a loud crash. Cold wind rushed in. The door had been thrown wide, as if by tremendous force, but no one stood at the entrance. Moonlight spilled into the cabin. There were no tracks on the ground. The crawling under the bed stopped. A heavy silence. Then, from outside, the breathing again. But this time, it was above me, on the roof of the cabin. A scratching sound from inside the wood, long claws raking across the planks. The weight overhead pressed down on the roof. Dust drifted onto me. Something was moving up there. I realized I couldn't stay. I grabbed my flashlight, snatched my pack, and ran out. I didn't look back. As I fled, I heard something slam against the cabin. Whatever had climbed onto the roof was trying to come down quickly. I ran through the darkness, stumbling through the forest. Moonlight barely outlined the path. My breath was failing. Minutes passed before I heard something breaking behind me. Then the sound of that thing again. The breathing. It was getting closer. My boots sank into mud, but I didn't stop. I ran. Branches scratched my face. At last, I saw a distant light, a campground. A few hikers sat around a fire. I stumbled toward them. I couldn't speak. I was gasping for air. One look at my face, and they stood up immediately. I turned back toward the forest. The tree line was silent, completely still. But in my ears, I could still hear that breathing, as if, once that door opened, it never really closed.
This story began on one of the safest routes I had ever hiked in the Appalachian Mountains. That day, my only goal was to clear my mind and take a quiet walk in nature for a few hours. A simple trail, a stream, a few birds. I was experienced, well prepared, and the route was one even children could walk. But some places, no matter how safe they look on a map, make their own rules once night approaches. I started hiking a few hours before sunset. The weather was calm. As I followed the trail, the forest around me felt almost peaceful. Evening light filtered through the trees, and birds were singing their last songs of the day. About an hour later, the path split in two. The right trail led toward the lake. The left opened into an old forestry road. I chose the left because on the map it looked like a straight line. How difficult could it be? I would realize how wrong that thought was only a few hours later. The trail gradually narrowed. The trees grew thicker. Their shadows deepened. The sun had not fully set, yet everything around me looked like a dark tunnel. I felt as though I had wandered off the path, but my GPS still insisted I was on the correct route. That bothered me even more, because the trail looked as if it had been reshaped not by people, but by something else. Branches brushed against my shoulders, and the dry leaves underfoot crunched in a strange, unnatural way. After roughly 20 minutes, the trail disappeared entirely. But the GPS still said, en route. I looked around. The trees were so tightly interwoven that even turning back felt difficult. Just as I took a step backward, I heard a sound. A whistling noise coming from deep within the woods. It wasn't melodic, it wasn't cheerful, it was human in tone, but unbearably slow, with a chilling frequency, like air being forced out of someone's lungs. The whistle came again, as if someone was calling me. When it stopped, the silence in the forest grew heavier, dense, suffocating. In that stillness, you could even hear your own heartbeat. I decided to move forward because turning back had become nearly impossible. As I pushed deeper through the trees, I heard the sound again, this time closer, and I realized something else. That whistle wasn't alone. Beneath it was another sound. Foot dragging. It resembled human footsteps, but too slow, too deliberate, as if something was following me. I took out my flashlight. Cutting through the shadows, I pointed it ahead. A figure appeared between the trees. I couldn't make out its outline clearly, only that it was tall and unnaturally thin. It did not move, yet I could see two faint pale gray points where its eyes should have been. The whistle started again, this time from the direction of the figure. I held my breath and stepped back. At that moment, the figure took a step. Its body swayed like a thin branch. It wasn't walking, it wasn't crawling. It moved in a way that ignored gravity, gliding. The whistle stopped. A distant scream echoed through the trees. It sounded human, but muffled, pained, as though it came from very far away. The moment I heard it, instinct took over. I had to run. I started running, but there was no path anymore, only tangled branches, dry leaves, high roots. My feet caught on the ground, my shirt snagged on branches, my knees slammed into the earth. I didn't look back, yet I heard footsteps matching mine, getting closer. Eventually, I reached an opening, a small creek. The sound of the water grounded me for a moment. I bent down and splashed my face. My hands were shaking, but the water calmed me until I saw movement on the other side of the creek. The black silhouette, clearer this time, taller than any human. Its shoulders were sunken, its arms seemed longer than enough to drag along the ground, and its face held no features. The eyes were no longer gray, they were completely white. Another whistle. This time, it sounded right beside my ear. I stumbled backward in panic. My foot slipped, and I fell into the creek. The water was cold. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. I scrambled up and ran. Even the sound of the stream no longer offered comfort. As I sprinted into the deeper parts of the forest, I saw a light, a faint glow. I rushed toward it. I emerged at the edge of a small campsite. A family was sitting around a fire. When they saw me running toward them, they ran to help me. I turned back toward the forest. It was dark, completely still, nothing visible. But I heard something. One last whistle. This time, soft, almost like a farewell. The next morning, I returned to the trail with the police. They told me the route shown on the GPS had been closed for years. No one had entered that area in a very long time. I saw it myself. Bushes and trees had swallowed the entire path. The trail still existed on the map, but not in reality. I can still hear that whistle in my ears. And there is one more thing. That night, on my phone, which I had not touched, I found a voice recording. I had not made it. When I played it, I heard only one thing, a whistle from deep within the forest, followed by a whisper, "I cleared the path for you." The story ends here, but whenever I walk down a silent forest trail, part of me waits for that whistle to return.